Hello students, a very good evening to all and welcome back to discussion of daily current affairs of 20th of July. So this is the first article for today. So here the first topic is related to the march of Cockroach Janata Party towards Parliament. So as you know that this party has already declared that on 20th of July we will be marching towards the Parliament because they have certain kind of demands related to educational reforms. So here we shall not be moving into the details that how all these things came up, why the protest is happening. Here we shall be discussing the legal background of that how all these things can be happening in India. So here basically we will be discussing that whether a permission is needed from police if you want to do any peaceful public protest in India. So here the first question will be that is the right to protest a fundamental right? Because if I am saying that I would be joining the protest march of Cockroach Janata Party in Delhi. So here the first question will be, can I do that? Can I do that without even asking the police, or can I do that without having a permission? So ideally if I would ask, so ideally the answer would be yes, because doing a peaceful protest is my fundamental right. That means every time I don't have to go and ask for a permission that whether can I do a peaceful protest or not. You don't need permission for that. Maybe you would be needing permission for all different things, that whether my protest will be peaceful or not, or how many participants would be there in the protest. All these things maybe I have to provide to the police. But for this thing, can I do peaceful public protest? So here you don't need to take any permission. So here, is the right to protest, peaceful protest, fundamental right? Answer is a big yes. Right to protest, right to peaceful protest is a fundamental right in India. Now what will be those fundamental, will be that fundamental right? So Article 19 of Indian Constitution provides the citizens of India fundamental right to conduct a peaceful protest related to any matter. So here if I talk about the details of Article 19, so Article 19 clause 1 subclause A says freedom of speech and expression. So you have the complete freedom to put forward your demands in front of the government. So that comes under the freedom of speech and expression. Next thing is Article 19 clause 1 subclause B, which says right to assemble peacefully without the arms. That means if 100 or 200 people are coming, but still they are doing the peaceful protest, then they have the fundamental right, they can do that thing. Now, next topic will be, is this right to protest absolute? Absolute means, is this the case that every time I can protest without taking permission from the police? That means, since it is my fundamental right, can I do it all the time? So here answer will be no, because there will be some kind of reasonable restrictions. Because even if you are doing peaceful protest, but because of that peaceful protest, you are blocking the traffic, or you are sitting on very main road which is used by the everyday passengers, then you are disrupting the law and order, right? That's why we are saying that this right to protest, which is a fundamental right, but this is not absolute right, and there are some reasonable restrictions which are mentioned in the Constitution. Reasonable restrictions: sovereignty, integrity of India, security of the state, friendly relations. These are very basic things. But since we are discussing about the protest of Cockroach Janata Party, so here main thing will be about the public order. That whatever kind of protest you do, the public order must not be affected. So here this is the main point. Now coming to that here, ideally we discussed that police permission is not needed, but still in reality we have to take the permission of police. What is the reason for that? Because all the public protests would be involving large crowds, right? That large crowd would be sitting on the main road. That main road would be disrupting a lot of traffic. Because of that, you have to take permission from the police and you have to inform the police so that police can make the necessary arrangements, so that police can maintain the public order. So here because the public protest involved large crowds, public roads, traffic management. Because of that, generally you have to obtain a no objection certificate from the police, so that police can make a lot of arrangements, and you have to give a proper information that at what time you will be coming, how many people will be participating, what route you would be using for conducting the protest, all these things. Now, yes, next question comes, can police refuse the permission? So answer is yes, because if police thinks that your protest is affecting the public order, then police can refuse to give the permission if it is affecting the public order or public safety or any other kind of thing. Now coming to, can the public permission be withdrawn? That means, for example, police has given you permission, but in the middle of the protest, if police thinks that this protest is not going peaceful and it can affect the public order or the state security, then eventually police can withdraw the permission. Now, how this can happen? This can happen earlier it was section 144. Earlier it was section 144 of CRPC. So section 144 was related to curfew. But now, replacing CRPC, we have Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Samhita. So under BNSS 2023, we have section 163. So section 163 says that executive magistrate can issue urgent orders if the protest is creating the public nuisance or if the protest is affecting the public order. Now, next important article is about the foundation stone of world's largest curd production plant in India. So, world's largest curd production plant would be set up in West Bengal. Yes, so here the news that recently the foundation stone for world's largest curd production plant was set up in Hyderabad. This foundation was laid down in Howrah in West Bengal. Next important thing about the news is that during the visit of the Home Minister, the Museum of Word or the Shabd Lok, which is India's first immersive language museum, this thing was also inaugurated. So here we shall be discussing about two things. First is the foundation stone for the curd production plant, and second will be the foundation for the Museum of Word, or that is the Shabd Lok. So quickly, first of all, we will discuss that what will be the expected benefits of the curd production plant in Howrah. So first benefit will be, it would benefit around 1.2 lakh small dairy farmers and cattle rearers, because if you are setting up curd production plant, then all the farmers would be having a definite buyer. Because every time, all the dairy farmers, every time they are in the confusion that whether there will be some buyer or not, whether we will be getting some money or not. But since it is curd production plant, then it is definite that that particular company or enterprise would be buying the milk for the curd production. So here there will be some definiteness in the income. Next, it would provide an assured market for the milk producers. The same thing, it will strengthen the dairy value chain in the eastern India. It will strengthen the dairy value chain, because for value chain, what all things you need? For value chain, good value chain, you need the backward linkages, you need the forward linkages. So the milk production would act as an important part of the backward linkage. Next, it would generate employment in processing, logistics and allied sectors. And next, it would promote the value-added dairy products. Value-added means from milk you can make curd, right? You can make cottage cheese, many things you can make. So this is the value addition in any product. Now, all these things are made on the lines of the Amul cooperative, because as you already know, this Amul cooperative started from Gujarat. And what is the main purpose of cooperative? For example, earlier small farmers used to sell their milk products individually. In that way, they were not able to generate a lot of income. But one day, all the farmers came together, and now all these farmers are themselves owning their business. For example, some farmers are involved in collection, some farmers are involved in packaging, some farmers are involved in the production. So because of that, so this is the main main purpose of cooperative. In cooperative, the benefits will be shared from all the stakeholders. So in India, this Amul cooperative work at the state level, district level, as well as the village level. So here all the profits is distributed among all the stakeholders. Now, next we will discuss about the Museum of Word or Shabdlok. So first of all, please remember where this museum is established. So it is established in Alipore in Kolkata. And curd production facility was set up in Howrah in West Bengal. This is set up in Alipore in Kolkata. Now, who developed it? So it was developed under Ministry of Culture, and the body was the National Library. Now, if we talk about the significance, so this is very important. This is India's first immersive language museum. So from word museum, you can understand that this museum would show us the evolution of languages over a period of time. How language started and what was the history, and over a period of time, how languages have changed their form. But please focus on the word immersive. Immersive means in the museum will not be containing the static pictures or the static text. It would be using some digital technologies. For example, it can use holograms, or for example, it can use some kind of audio visuals, which can through which you can actually feel that this was the language in historic times and this was the language now, how the transition happened. So here important thing is that 22 languages which are recognized by the 8th schedule of the constitution. So all 22 languages, the evolution of 22 languages you can see here. Yes, now coming to next important topic. So recently a study was done by Indian Council of Medical Research, and according to study, Indians are having huge amount of bad cholesterol. That means, so since Indians have the risk of bad cholesterol, because of that Indians have the risk of heart diseases. So yes, quickly let's understand. So according to a recent study, around 87% of Indian adults have at least one abnormal lipid level. Lipid level means you can consider the level of fats. So around 87% of Indians have the fats level which are abnormal. And if fats level are abnormal, it can lead to various kind of problems. For example, cardiac arrest. And the findings highlight that a silent epidemic of cardiovascular risk in India, affecting even young as well as apparently healthy individuals. So that means even if the individual look healthy, even if an individual does not have any diabetes, or the weight is okay, height is okay, then also in Indians it is seen that the risk of cardiovascular diseases is increasing. Now, an important term which was used in the article was the dyslipidemia. What is it? So it is a condition in which level of fats in the body are abnormal. That means abnormally very high. So that term we call as dyslipidemia. Now please understand that dyslipidemia, that means the levels of fats are not low. Levels of fats are abnormally high. So when we discuss about the levels of fats, we discuss these many things. First of all, we discuss about the lipoproteins. See, please understand, when we talk about the blood, our blood, so the very high percentage in our blood is of water, right? So this is very obvious that all the vitamins, minerals, everything which are related to fat or which are related to oily substance, those cannot be absorbed by the blood, because blood is consisting mainly of water, and water cannot easily absorb, or water cannot easily mix the fatty substances. So because of that, we have one kind of protein, and that is known as lipoprotein. So lipoprotein is responsible to mix all the kind of fatty substances, and they can mix all the kind of fatty substances, and along with that, along with the blood, fats can be carried. But in lipoprotein, we have two kind of lipoproteins. First is the low density lipoprotein, and that is known as bad cholesterol. Because low density lipoprotein increases the amount of fatty substances in the arteries, and over a period of time the arteries can be blocked and blood flow can be stopped. Now coming to second type of lipoprotein, that is high density lipoprotein, and it is also known as good cholesterol because it acts in the form of scavenger. The function of high density lipoprotein is to unblock the arteries which were blocked by these bad cholesterol. Next is the triglycerides. What are triglycerides? These are kind of fatty substances which store the fats which are still unused. So the calories which are still unused, triglycerides will be storing them so that they can be used further in future for the energy. So the problem is that if the level of triglycerides increase a lot, then also there is a risk of heart disease. And finally, because of these things, total cholesterol or total fatty level in our body increases, and hence there is a risk of heart disease. Now, what are the major findings? So, first major finding we already discussed, 87% have at least one abnormal lipid parameter. Next is 2 out of 3 adults had low HDL cholesterol. Low HDL cholesterol, that means bad cholesterol. So 2 out of 3 persons have this risk of low HDL. Next, what we have to discuss is that around 355 million Indians may have abnormal lipid levels, even though they have normal blood sugar level, they are not obese. Even after all these things, there might be possibility of abnormal lipid levels. And yes, next thing is women showed a higher prevalence than men. This is very, very important. So in women, there is higher risk of having the high amount of bad lipoprotein. Now, here the main question comes, why Indians are more vulnerable? So, first important reason is the genetic predisposition. That means from genetics only you get this factor that in your blood there will be high amount of bad cholesterol. So, one thing is the genetic predisposition. Second thing is the carbohydrate-rich diet which is consumed by the Indians. For example, chapatis in northern India, or for example, rice in South India. Both these kind of things are carbohydrate-rich. So, because of that also the quantity of bad cholesterol increases. And next thing, mostly the food we eat, mostly nowadays the food we eat, those kinds of food have very high amount of triglycerides. So these are some of the reasons. Now, next important article is about the electronic gold receipts. So this is very good article. So you can understand in this way that, for example, you want to invest money in 100 grams of gold. But you want to have physical gold, you want the ownership of physical gold, but now you have the worry that how would I store that gold? I have the worry of theft. How should I store? I have the worry of theft. These are the main problems. So what you will do, you will store that gold in the SEBI authoritated vault. Understood? SEBI recognized. So vault means a kind of locker. So what you will do, you will put your gold in this vault which is registered with SEBI, and what this vault will do, this vault will convert your gold into electronic gold receipts. Understood? So here I had the physical gold, I deposited this physical gold in this vault. Now this physical gold converted into receipts. Now these receipts would be visible on my Demat account. Now, if I want to sell this gold, then I can easily trade on the stock market, or if I want my gold back, I want my ownership back, then I can redeem my gold using this electronic gold receipts. So this is the complete news. So here, the electronic gold receipts are emerging as a new SEBI regulated avenue for investing in physical gold. So if we talk about the definition, so these are the dematerialized securities that represent ownership of physical gold stored in the SEBI accredited vaults. So here you will be having two benefits. First, still you have the ownership of actual physical gold. But second, you don't have to worry, where should I store, right? So here you are having two benefits. So instead of holding gold physically, investor can hold an electronic receipt in the Demat account. So if we discuss about the features, the first important thing, it is backed by actual gold, right? Then it can be traded on stock exchanges like shares, so this is very good. Then if you are getting the receipt, it will be visible in your Demat account. It eliminates the storage and theft concerns we already discussed. It provides transparent price discovery, because see, when you will be depositing this gold in the vault, so this vault will analyze many things. What is the quality? What is the recent market price? What is the quantity? So you will be getting a fair price, and it can be converted into physical gold. You can easily redeem them. Quickly, let's discuss the difference between the electronic gold receipts as well as the digital gold. So electronic gold receipts, just now we discussed, they are regulated by SEBI, but it is not important that digital gold can be regulated by SEBI. Well, digital gold is what? Digital gold, that means you can easily buy gold through any e-commerce platform. This is the meaning. But these are actual receipts which can be traded on the stock exchange, and for this they will be presented in the Demat account, but they will be held with the service provider. That's it. And it will be backed by gold and SEBI approved vaults, but this depends on what kind of platform you are using. Understood? So this is a practice question for you. So here, please read the question carefully, pause the video, read the question, and try to answer this question in the comment section. So that's all from my side for today. Thank you and have a nice day.